The quill scratched against parchment with the monotonous rhythm of a dying heartbeat. Baek Kang-ho's office was a cramped closet on the third sublevel of the Demon Lord's castle, lit by a single flickering soul-flame lantern. Stacks of forms, incursion reports, resource requisitions, casualty summaries rose like stalagmites around his desk. He was on page 187 of a 200-page assessment of the hero's latest raid, a tedious breakdown of structural damage to the east wing and the loss of 17 imps to holy magic. His eyes burned. His back ached. 15 years of this. 15 years of mediating territorial disputes between demon clans, filing paperwork on hero incursions, and being told his pension was under review. He rubbed his temples, feeling the familiar throb of a stressed headache building behind his eyes. The salary was decent, but the lack of respect was corrosive. A sudden tremor shook the castle. Dust rained from the ceiling. Baek sighed, not even looking up. Another spell misfire from the boss, he muttered, dipping his quill. Probably trying to intimidate the kitchen staff again. Then the door to his office exploded inward. A wave of violet energy, crackling with raw death mana, surged through the hallway. It was a curse the Demon Lord's signature soul rend, but it was wild, uncontrolled. Baek had only a split second to register the searing light before it slammed into his chest. He expected pain. He expected oblivion. Instead, he felt a strange, spiraling warmth deep in his core, as if something ancient had been unlocked. The violet energy didn't destroy him. It flowed into his meridians, a network of pathways he never knew he had, and transformed. The death mana was refined, purified, converted into a stream of pure, silver-white chi that flooded his body. His vision sharpened. The ache in his back vanished. His heart beat with a steady, powerful rhythm. He looked down at his hands, expecting to see them charred or withered. They were fine. Better than fine. A faint, black-inked meridian line glowed under the skin of his right palm, pulsing with a soft light. Heartburn, he said aloud, his voice flat. Definitely heartburn. Too much goblin chili in the cafeteria stew. He stood up, brushing the dust off his modest gray robe. The report. He needed to finish the report. The Demon Lord's tantrum could wait. He walked to the door, stepping over the smoldering remains of the frame, and peered into the hallway. A few imps were scurrying away, their eyes wide with terror. "Is everyone all right?" Baek called out, his voice calm and managerial. One imp, a small green creature named Grip, squeaked, "Lord Baek. You're alive. The curse, it hit you directly." "Yes, well, I'm fine. Please file a maintenance request for my door. And tell the Demon Lord that if he's going to practice death magic, he should do it in the designated firing range." Grip nodded frantically and scampered off. Baek returned to his desk. He sat down, picked up his quill, and stared at the glowing meridian line on his hand. It was still there, a delicate web of black ink just beneath the skin. He flexed his fingers. A faint pulse of energy answered him, like a second heartbeat. He shook his head. "I'll get it checked at the annual health screening. Next month." He returned to page 288. The words blurred. The warmth in his core was distracting, a constant hum that made his thoughts feel sharper and his body lighter. He finished the report in half the usual time, his handwriting swift and precise. As he stamped the final page with the HR seal, the meridian line flared once, then faded, invisible again. Baek leaned back in his chair. The curse should have killed him. Instead, it had left him feeling good, energized. He looked at his hand again, searching for the line. It was gone. But he knew it was there, waiting. "Just heartburn," he whispered, and reached for the next form. The summons came not by the usual memo, but by a trembling green imp who burst through Baek Kang-ho's door without knocking. Grip, the messenger, stammered something about an immediate audience in the throne room, no paperwork, No prior notice. Baek sighed, setting down his quill. The ink on the hero report was barely dry. He straightened his tie, adjusted his spectacles, and followed the ink through the obsidian corridors of the Demon Lord's castle. The throne room was a cavern of black marble and pulsing crimson veins of lava that snaked along the ceiling. The Demon Lord sat upon his jagged throne, fingers drumming on the armrest. His eyes, twin pools of molten gold, fixed on Baek with an intensity that made the air thicken. Baek Kang-ho, the Demon Lord's voice echoed, smooth as poison honey. Your performance review. Baek blinked. My lord, I submitted the quarterly report on hero incursions just yesterday. The data shows a 12% decrease in damages compared to last. Silence. The Demon Lord's fist slammed the throne, sending a cracked spiderwebbing across the marble. You failed to stop the hero. He breached the outer wall. He killed 12 of my elite scouts. And you sit in your office, filing papers. Baek opened his mouth to explain that his job was HR, not battlefield command, but the Demon Lord raised a hand. From the shadows behind the throne, 4 figures emerged. They were the Lord's personal guard, elite demons clad in obsidian armor, their eyes glowing with mana. Each carried a long sword etched with runes that hummed with destructive energy. I'm afraid, the Demon Lord said, leaning back with a cold smile, your performance has been unsatisfactory. Termination is the only remedy. Baek's heart dropped. 15 years. 15 years of spreadsheets, mediation, and quiet dedication. And this was how they thanked him. He took a step back, but the guards had already encircled him. Their swords ignited with dark flames. My lord, if this is about the report, I can revise it. The first guard lunged. His sword arced toward Baek's neck, trailing a ribbon of black fire. Time slowed. Baek's body moved on instinct, a stance he'd practiced 10,000 times in his youth, when he studied martial arts to manage stress. His feet slid apart, knees bent, spine straight. The iron repose. A basic form, useless in a world of magic. But his right palm rose, fingers loose, and met the descending blade. A shock wave rippled through the hall. The sword shattered into 1,000 shards, the dark flames dissipating like smoke. The guard stumbled back, staring at his empty hand. Baek felt it, a surge of warmth flooding his meridians. The mana from the sword strike had been absorbed, refined, and converted into pure chi. A second meridian line ignited beneath his skin, then a third. He had leveled up twice in a single breath. The other 3 guards hesitated. The Demon Lord's smile vanished. What are you? The first guard whispered. Baek didn't answer. He closed his eyes, extending his senses. Chi sense bloomed in his mind like a sonar ping. He could feel the guards' heartbeats, the tension in their muscles, the flow of mana in their veins. They were preparing to attack simultaneously, one from the left, one from the right, one from behind. He opened his eyes. The left guard came first, sword thrusting for his heart. Baek sidestepped, palm striking the flat of the blade. It shattered. He pivoted, catching the right guard's wrist mid-swing, twisting until the sword clattered to the floor. A backhanded palm strike to the chest sent the third guard crashing into the wall, his armor dented. The fourth guard, the one who had lunged first, charged again with a dagger. Baek caught his arm, applied pressure to a nerve cluster, and the demon yelped, dropping the weapon. Silence. 3 guards lay groaning on the floor. The fourth cradled his broken wrist. Baek stood in the center, his suit slightly rumpled, his spectacles askew. He straightened them. The Demon Lord had risen from his throne, backing away slowly. His golden eyes were wide, his lips parted. The air around him crackled with panic. Baek took a step forward. The Demon Lord stumbled back against the throne's armrest. Stay back. I am your lord. I command you. My lord, Baek said, his voice calm, almost bored. He reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The resignation form. He had been carrying it for months, waiting for the right moment. About my severance package. The demon lord's face drained of color. The lava veins above them pulsed, casting long shadows across the hall. The morning air in the demon lord's courtyard was thick with the scent of brimstone and ozone. Baek Kang-ho stood at the center of the cracked stone plaza, his resignation form folded neatly in his inner robe pocket. He had been about to walk to the castle gates when a blinding flash of light erupted from the sky, followed by a thunderous declaration. Baek Kang-ho, face me! The hero descended from a pillar of golden light, his white cape billowing in an unnatural wind. His armor, polished to a mirror sheen, reflected the terrified faces of demon servants scrambling for cover. Behind him, a retinue of guild officials and adventurers lined the castle walls, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. Baek sighed. Can we reschedule? I have paperwork. The hero's face twisted with indignation. You humiliated me before the entire realm. You dispersed my ultimate spell with a mere wave. Today, I will prove that was a fluke. Prepare yourself for a real fight. Baek rubbed his temples. The nameless heavenly demon scripture within him pulsed, sensing the hero's gathering mana. It was like a sixth sense, chi sense, allowing him to perceive the flow of energy in all living things. The hero's aura was like a bonfire, bright and aggressive, but riddled with inefficiencies. Leaks in his stance, overextension in his channeling, wasted energy in his breath. Very well, Baek said, adopting a neutral stance. But if I win, you leave me alone. The hero scoffed. You won't win. He raised his hand, and the sky darkened. Celestial judgment. A colossal orb of golden light formed above the courtyard, its radiance so intense that shadows fled. The temperature plummeted, then skyrocketed as the spell condensed. It was a technique designed to obliterate demon lords, a concentrated beam of holy energy that could vaporize a mountain. Baek watched it form with detached curiosity. His chi sense mapped the spell structure, a core of compressed light, a shell of divine law, and a trigger mechanism tied to the hero's will. It was powerful, yes, but crude. All that energy, and so little finesse. Then, the hero released it. The beam descended like a spear of fire. Baek's body moved before his mind caught up. The nameless heavenly demon scripture had already analyzed the attack and fed him the counter. His hand rose, palm open, fingers slightly curled. A technique surfaced in his memory, a scroll he had glimpsed once in the castle's forbidden archive, dismissed as gibberish by the demon scholars. Now, its meaning was crystal clear. Heavenly demon palm, first form. He thrust his palm forward. A wave of black chi erupted from his hand, not as a blast, but as a spiraling vortex. It met the celestial judgment head-on. For a moment, the two forces clashed, light and darkness wrestling in the sky. The hero grinned, expecting Baek to be overwhelmed. But then, the vortex began to spin faster. It didn't repel the holy light, it absorbed it. The golden beam was drawn into the black spiral like water into a dream, converted, purified, and returned as pure chi. Baek felt the energy flood his meridians. 5 levels of mortal purging heavenly demon chi unlocked in an instant. His stamina, already full, regenerated to a point beyond his baseline. He felt like he could run a marathon, fight a war, and file 100 reports without breaking a sweat. The hero's eyes widened. Impossible. Then the backlash hit. The vortex collapsed inward, then exploded outward. A shockwave of neutralized energy blasted across the courtyard, throwing the hero off his feet. He crashed into the castle wall, his armor cracked, his cape torn. His followers screamed and scattered. Silence. Baek lowered his hand. The black chi faded, and he stood there, utterly unharmed, looking vaguely annoyed. He pulled out his resignation form and waved it in the air. Can I get my resignation approved now? The hero lay unconscious, slumped against the rubble. No one answered. The demon servants peeked from behind pillars, their jaws hanging open. The guild officials were already retreating, dragging their fallen champion away. Baek sighed again. I'll take that as a no. The candle on the bedside table sputtered, casting dancing shadows across the cramped quarters Baek Kang-ho had been assigned. It was a room barely larger than his old cubicle, with a single cot, a rickety desk, and a wardrobe that listed to one side. He lay on the cot, staring at the water-stained ceiling, his mind churning with the day's events. The hero's defeat had been satisfying, but it had also painted a target on his back. He could feel the weight of unseen eyes, the subtle shift of air currents that spoke of movement where there should be none. A faint click, barely audible over the crackling candle, came from the window. Baek's chi sense flared, a cold wave of awareness washing over him. 3 presences, each cloaked in a miasma of killing intent, were creeping toward his room. They moved with practiced silence, their steps muffled by the thick stone of the castle walls. The air grew thick, carrying the acrid scent of poison, something dark and soul-eating, meant to snuff out life before a scream could be raised. He did not move. He let his breathing remain slow and even, feigning sleep. The assassins were confident, their arrogance palpable. They believed him to be an easy mark, a paper pusher who had stumbled into power. Baek's lips twitched into a faint smile. Let them come. The window slid open without a sound. 3 figures dropped into the room, their forms clad in black leather, faces hidden behind masks. Each held a curved dagger, the blades glistening with a sickly green sheen. They surrounded the cot, and the lead assassin raised his weapon for a swift, merciful strike. Baek moved. It was not a thought, but instinct, the shadow step flowing through him like a breath. He rolled off the cot, his body becoming a blur of motion as the dagger pierced the empty space where his heart had been. The assassin's eyes widened behind his mask. Baek's feet touched the floor, and he pivoted, his hand snapping out in a precise arc. Pressure point strike. His index finger jabbed into the lead assassin's throat, just below the Adam's apple. A burst of chi disrupted the flow of mana and blood, and the man crumpled like a puppet with cut strings. The second assassin lunged, his dagger aimed at Baek's kidney. Baek sidestepped, the blade whispering past his coat. He caught the man's wrist, twisted, and drove his palm into the assassin's temple. The field tried to flee, but Baek's shadow step carried him to the window, blocking the escape. A single chop to the side of the neck, and the last assassin fell. Silence returned. The candle flickered, casting the room in a warm, steady glow. Baek stood among the 3 bodies, his breathing even, his pulse calm. He prodded the lead assassin with his foot. The man was paralyzed, his eyes darting in panic, but his body locked in place. Who sent you? Baek asked, his voice flat. The assassin's lips moved, but only a gurgle escaped. Baek sighed and knelt, pressing a finger to the man's chest, releasing a trickle of chi to restore his speech. Speak. I don't have time for games. The clan leaders, the assassin rasped. Lord Malachar and Lady Seraphine. They fear your power. They paid us handsomely to end you before you grew stronger. Baek's eyes narrowed. And the demon lord? Does he know? The assassin's gaze flickered, a hint of fear creeping in. He gave his blessing. In secret. He fears you more than them. Baek's jaw tightened. He had suspected as much. The demon lord's assassination attempt had been clumsy, but this was professional. He searched the assassin's belt and found a rolled parchment. Unfurling it, he saw a death warrant, written in elegant calligraphy, bearing the demon lord's personal seal, a horned skull with crossed swords. The document listed his name, his crimes, usurpation of demonic authority, and the authorized bounty. It was signed and dated that very day. He stared at the seal, a cold fury settling in his chest. 15 years of service. 15 years of filing reports, mediating disputes, and cleaning up the Demon Lord's messes. And this was his reward, a death warrant signed by the very man he had spared. Baek folded the parchment and tucked it into his coat. He looked at the 3 assassins, still paralyzed on his floor. "You'll live," he said. "But you'll tell your masters that Baek Kang-ho is not so easily killed. And that if they send another, I will come for them personally." He stepped over their bodies and walked to the door. The candle guttered and died, plunging the room into darkness. Baek's chi sense guided him through the castle's winding corridors, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The Demon Lord's chambers lay at the heart of the fortress, guarded by elite soldiers and layers of wards. Baek did not slow. He had a resignation form to file, and he would not be denied. As he approached the grand doors, a cold wind swept through the hall, carrying a whisper of ancient power. Baek paused, his hand resting on the door handle. The death warrant burned in his pocket, a promise of betrayal. He pushed open the door, and the Demon Lord looked up from his throne, his eyes widening in surprise. "Baek, how did you?" Baek held up the parchment. "We need to talk." The throne room's obsidian doors groaned open under Baek Kang-ho's palm. He stepped inside, the signed death warrant crinkling in his coat pocket like a second heartbeat. The Demon Lord sat hunched on his jagged throne, a goblet of crimson wine trembling in his clawed hand. His crimson eyes darted from Baek's face to the 3 assassins' names scrawled on the parchment Baek held up. "You're late for the monthly review," Baek said, his voice flat as a filing cabinet. He walked forward, each step deliberate, his leather shoes clicking against the polished black stone. "I've brought my resignation form. You need to sign it." The Demon Lord's wine sloshed over the rim. "Kang-ho, let's talk about this. A promotion? A raise? I'll double your pension. I've been here 15 years. You tried to have me killed." Baek pulled the resignation form from his inner pocket, unfolding it with the care of a man presenting a final invoice. "Sign it. Then I'm gone." The Demon Lord's face twisted from fear to desperation. He slammed his goblet down and clapped his hands twice. "You leave me no choice. Awaken, Ancient One. Devour this insolent clerk." The far wall of the throne room cracked open, a seam of violet light splitting the stone. From the darkness emerged a creature of nightmare, a towering mass of obsidian scales, with 3 serpentine heads and wings that scraped the ceiling. Each eye burned like a dying star, and its roar sent tremors through Baek's bones. The ancient demon's presence pressed down like a mountain, and dark mana swirled around it like a tempest. Baek sighed. "I don't have time for this." The demon lunged, its jaws gaping wide, spewing a torrent of black fire. Baek didn't flinch. He raised one hand, palm open, and let the flames wash over him. The mortal purging heavenly demon chi within him stirred, recognizing the hostile magic as fuel. The fire dissolved into golden strands of energy that spiraled into his dantian, each thread adding to his cultivation. He felt his meridians expand, his core pulse with newfound strength. 10 levels surged through him in the span of a breath. The ancient demon's head recoiled, confusion flickering in its 6 eyes. It had expected ash, not a man standing unharmed. Baek lowered his hand. Heavenly demon finger, piercing void. He extended his index finger, and a single point of black light condensed at its tip. The air around it screamed as space itself warped. He thrust forward, and a beam of void energy shot straight through the demon's central core, a diamond-shaped crystal embedded in its chest. The creature froze, its scales cracking, then shattered into a rain of obsidian dust that scattered across the throne room floor. The silence that followed was absolute. The demon lord's jaw hung open, his crown askew. Baek walked to the throne, stepping over the pile of dust, and placed the resignation form on the armrest. Pen. The demon lord's hand trembled as he reached for a quill dipped in ink. He leaned over the form, the tip hovering above the signature line. You'll really just leave? After all this? Yes. The quill touched the paper, and the wall exploded. A blinding flash of light, a crash of splintering stone, and 6 figures burst through the gap. At their head stood the hero, his armor reforged, his sword glowing with a brilliant white aura. His eyes were wild, his grin manic. Behind him came a mage in crimson robes, an elven archer with a bow of living wood, a dwarven berserker wielding a double-bladed axe, a shadowy rogue with twin daggers, and a towering paladin in silver plate. Baek Kang-ho. The hero roared, his voice echoing with righteous fury. You thought you could humiliate me and walk away. I've gathered the strongest party in the realm. Today, you die. Baek looked at the resignation form, then at the hero, then back at the form. He pinched the bridge of his nose. I just need one signature. The hero raised his sword, light gathering around its blade. Your reign of terror ends now. Baek turned fully, his expression one of profound exhaustion. Do you have any idea how long it takes to file a proper resignation? The paperwork alone. The hero's party fanned out, weapons drawn. The demon lord scrambled off his throne, clutching the resignation form like a shield. Baek cracked his neck. Fine. Let's make this quick. The throne room erupted into chaos. Dust still settled from the hero's dramatic entrance as his new party fanned out behind him. Baek Kang-ho watched them with the weary resignation of a man who had just dealt with a 3-headed demon and now had to deal with a performance review from hell. The crimson-robed mage raised his staff first. Arcane symbols blazed to life in the air, weaving together into a sphere of compressed lightning. The silver-plated paladin slammed his tower shield into the ground, golden light cascading from his gauntlets as he chanted a blessing of protection. The shadowy rogue vanished from sight, his presence becoming nothing more than a whisper of displaced air. Coordinated attack. Standard adventure tactics, Baek thought, his chi sense flaring. He felt the rogue circling behind him, the mage building power, and the paladin anchoring the formation. The elven archer had already knocked an arrow, and the dwarven berserker was hefting a great axe that looked like it could split a boulder. The hero stood at the center, arms crossed, a smug smile plastered on his face. You won't survive this, demon scum. I've assembled the finest warriors from every corner of the continent. Baek sighed. Just sign the form, and I'll leave. No need for all this. Kill him. The hero roared. The mage unleashed the lightning sphere. It screamed across the throne room, leaving a trail of ozone and scorched stone. The paladin's shield glowed brighter as he prepared to charge. The rogue's dagger materialized an inch from Baek's kidney. Baek didn't flinch. He simply raised his hand and formed a chi barrier, reflective shell. The technique was a basic one from the nameless heavenly demon scripture, a defensive application that required perfect chi circulation and absolute mental calm. 15 years of filing reports, mediating disputes, and dealing with demon lords' tantrums had given him both. The lightning sphere struck the translucent barrier. Instead of exploding, it compressed, flattened, and reversed direction with twice its original velocity. The mage's eyes widened. He tried to conjure a word, but the rebounded spell caught him square in the chest. He flew backward, crashing through a stone pillar and embedding himself in the wall behind it. His staff clattered to the ground, still crackling with residual energy. One down, Baek muttered. The paladin charged, his shield leading. He was a wall of holy light and righteous fury. Baek planted his foot and executed heavenly demon kick, earth shatter. His leg swept low, not at the paladin, but at the ground. The marble floor erupted in a shockwave of fragmented stone. The paladin stumbled, his perfect stance broken. He crashed face first into the rubble, his shield spinning away. Baek felt the assassin's dagger kiss his robes. Chi sense had already painted the rogue's trajectory in his mind. He twisted, letting the blade slide past his ribs by a hair's breadth, and drove his elbow backward into the rogue's solar plexus. A back fist followed, catching the assassin across the jaw. The rogue crumpled like a puppet with cut strings. "That's 3. The elven archer released her arrow. It was a shimmering shaft of moonlight, enchanted to seek its target. Baek didn't dodge. He caught it between 2 fingers, the chi in his hand neutralizing the enchantment. He snapped the arrow in half and let the pieces fall. The dwarven berserker roared and charged, his great axe swinging in a horizontal arc meant to cleave Baek in 2. Baek stepped into the swing, using shadow step to blur past the blade. He tapped the dwarf's pressure point at the base of his skull. The berserker's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed, snoring. 4. Baek felt the cultivation levels surge within him. 8 levels, to be precise. The spells, the blessings, the enchanted arrows, all hostile magic, all converted into pure chi. His foundation grew stronger, his meridians more resilient. He looked at the hero, who was now pale, his smug expression replaced by naked terror. "Your party is unconscious. Your mage might have a concussion. The paladin will have a headache for a week." I held back. "I don't want to kill anyone." Baek walked toward the throne, where the resignation form still lay, untouched. He picked it up and held it out to the demon lord. "Sign it. Now." The demon lord's hand trembled as he reached for a quill. But the hero wasn't done. His face contorted with rage and humiliation. He reached into his cloak and pulled out a small, pulsating shard, a fragment of something ancient and terrible. The air in the room grew cold. Shadows deepened. The very stones seemed to groan. "You think you've won?" The hero hissed. "This is a fragment of a dead god's soul. I was saving it for the demon lord, but you'll do nicely." The shard began to glow with a malevolent light. Power, raw and chaotic, started to seep into the hero's veins. His eyes turned black. His skin cracked, revealing molten light beneath. Baek's chi sense screamed a warning. This was different. This wasn't just hostile magic, it was a corruption of reality itself. He looked at the resignation form in his hand, then at the hero, then back at the form. "I really don't have time for this," he muttered. The air in the throne room grew thick, heavy with an ancient pressure that made Baek Kang-ho's ears pop. The hero, Seraphina, held aloft a jagged shard of obsidian that pulsed with a sickly, violet light. Her eyes, once filled with righteous fury, now glazed over, the whites turning black as veins of crackling energy spread across her face and arms. "That's not a normal artifact," Baek thought, his chi sense screaming a warning. The shard was drinking in the ambient mana, twisting it into something chaotic, something hungry. It was a fragment of a dead god, a being of pure, unbridled power that had been sealed away eons ago. And Seraphina was channeling it all into herself. Her party members, still groaning on the floor, scrambled back in terror. The crimson-robed mage, Lysander, shouted, "Lady Seraphina, no. That will consume you." But she was beyond hearing. Her body began to warp, muscles bulging and skin taking on a stony, obsidian sheen. Winds of violet energy erupted from her back, and a halo of crackling lightning formed above her head. She was no longer a hero. She was a demigod of destruction. "You," she boomed, her voice layered with a chorus of ancient, inhuman tones, "will be my first sacrifice to the new order." She raised a hand, and a sphere of pure, violet annihilation formed in her palm. It was dense, screaming with power that could level the entire castle. Baek felt the pressure, the sheer weight of it, but instead of fear, he felt something else, a deep, resonant hunger from within his own core. The mortal purging heavenly demon chi stirred, reaching out like a starving beast toward the god fragment's energy. "It's just mana," Baek realized, a calm settling over him. "Chaotic, divine mana, but still just mana. And my chi converts hostile magic into cultivation progress. The sphere shot toward him, a beam of pure destruction that would have incinerated any demon or mage. Baek didn't dodge. He planted his feet, assuming the iron repose stance, and opened his palms. The beam struck his chest, and instead of piercing through, it was absorbed, drawn into his dantian like water into a sponge. A surge of power flooded his meridians, hot and overwhelming. His cultivation level skyrocketed, climbing by leaps and bounds 10, 15, 20 levels. His body trembled as the energy was refined, purified, and integrated into his own chi. A new technique crystallized in his mind, heavenly demon manifestation. A temporary form that would boost all his stats, a gift from the very energy meant to destroy him. Seraphina's eyes widened in disbelief. Impossible! That was pure divine wrath. Baek exhaled, a plume of violet steam escaping his lips. His aura flared, and around him, the air shimmered with a faint, demonic outline. He didn't activate the manifestation yet. He didn't need to. He simply raised his right hand, fingers curled into a claw, and focused his will. Heavenly Demon Palm, 7th form, he said quietly. The technique was a masterstroke of efficiency. It wasn't a flashy blast of energy. It was a precise, spiraling vortex of chi that targeted the source of the power, the god fragment itself. The palm strike shot forward, invisible to the naked eye, and struck the shard in Seraphina's hand. There was a sound like a bell shattering, high and pure. The obsidian fragment cracked, then exploded into dust. The violet energy around Seraphina dissipated like smoke in a gale. Her wings vanished, her halo died, and she collapsed to the ground, her body reverting to its normal, human form. She was unconscious, her clothes torn, her face peaceful for the first time since Baek had met her. The throne room fell silent. The party members stared, frozen. The demon lord, cowering behind his throne, peeked out, his jaw slack. Baek walked over to Seraphina's prone form, knelt, and checked her pulse. She was alive, just drained. He sighed, then stood and turned to the demon lord. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice flat, the resignation form. "No." The demon lord scrambled, pulling the crumpled parchment from his robes. With trembling hands, he signed it, pressing his ring into the wax seal. "Here! Take it! Just leave." Baek took the form, folded it carefully, and tucked it into his inner pocket. He felt a weight lift from his shoulders. 15 years of paperwork, of mediation, of being undervalued. It was over. He turned to leave, but as he reached the door, a tremor ran through the castle. The sky outside, visible through the shattered windows, turned a deep, blood red. A voice, ancient and vast, echoed from the heavens. "The seal is broken. The nameless heavenly demon awakens. All realms will kneel." Baek stopped, his hand on the doorframe. He looked back at the resignation form in his pocket, then up at the crimson sky. "I just want to retire," he thought bitterly. But the world had other plans. Baek Kang-ho's desk was a monument to 15 years of bureaucratic servitude. Stacks of neatly labeled folders: Hero Incursion Reports, Q4, Interclan Grievances, Vol. 47, Pension Denial Form, Ho, Bu, Rejected, stood like tombstones on the worn oak surface. He pulled open the bottom drawer, retrieving a cardboard box that had sat empty for 3 years, waiting for this day. The seal of the Demon Lord's castle, a crimson WRM coiled around a black tower, was stamped on the side. He began placing his personal effects inside: a chipped coffee mug that read "World's Okayest HR Manager," a stress ball shaped like a miniature hero's head, and a framed photo of his test plant, which had long since died and been replaced by a plastic replica. A sharp knock rattled the doorframe. Baek didn't turn. He knew the sound of heels on the obsidian floor, the clicked, impatient rhythm of Lilith, the Demon Lord's personal secretary. Her shadow stretched across his desk, a long, pointed thing that seemed to judge the clatter. Baek Kang-ho. Her voice was smooth as polished bone, carrying no warmth. The Demon Lord requests your presence for an exit interview. Immediately. The council chamber. Baek paused, his hand hovering over a stapler that had seen more battles than most soldiers. An exit interview. I already have his signature on the resignation form. Standard procedure, Lilith replied, her lips curving into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The council wishes to formally close your file. He turned, studying her face. The air around her crackled with a faint, sickly green mana and enchantment of some kind. His chi sense, honed by the nameless heavenly demon scripture, detected the subtle weave of a binding spell coiled beneath her skin. A fail-safe. Or a trigger. Very well, he said, setting down the stapler. Lead the way. The council chamber was a vast, circular room carved from living obsidian, its walls pulsing with veins of molten red. A massive table of petrified demon wood dominated the center, around which sat 7 figures, the clan leaders of the Demon Lord's inner circle. Their eyes tracked Baek as he entered, cold and predatory. The air was thick with mana, so dense it felt like wading through syrup. Baek's cultivation base hummed in response, converting the ambient hostility into a gentle warmth that spread through his meridians. Ah, our retiring HR manager, rumbled Goreth, the chieftain of the Crimson Maw clan. His tusked jaw split into a grin that revealed rows of serrated teeth. We've heard so much about your recent exploits. Just a salaryman doing his job, Baek said, taking a seat at the far end of the table. He placed his hands flat on the polished surface, fingers spread. Shall we begin? I have a cottage by the abyss waiting for me. The 7 clan leaders exchanged glances. Lilith retreated to the door, her hand brushing against a hidden rune carved into the frame. The green mana in the air spiked. We have reviewed your request, said a gaunt, pale demoness named Vexia of the Shadow Veil. Her voice dripped with venom. And we find it unsatisfactory. You have destabilized the power structure. You have humiliated the Demon Lord. And you possess a power that threatens our ancient order. So this is a termination, not an exit interview, Baek said, his tone flat. This is a correction, Goreth snarled. He slammed his fist on the table. The obsidian floor beneath Baek erupted in a complex array of glowing runes, a formation spell, meticulously laid in advance. Chains of black mana shot upward, wrapping around Baek's limbs, his torso, his neck. The pressure was immense, designed to crush a demon general's soul into submission. But Baek wasn't a demon general. He was a salaryman with a perfect martial foundation. The chains tightened, and the hostile mana flooded his system. His chi sense mapped the formation structure in an instant. 7 anchor points, each tied to a clan leader's core mana signature. A cage of pure annihilation. He took a slow breath. The mortal purging heavenly demon chi surged through his channels, devouring the black mana like a starving beast. The chains began to glow red, then white, then they shattered into motes of harmless light. The clan leader's eyes widened. Baek rose from his chair. He raised his right hand, fingers curled into a claw. Chi disruption wave. A shock wave of pure, colorless energy erupted from his palm, rippling outward in a perfect sphere. The formation runes on the floor flickered and died. The clan leaders were thrown back, their chairs scraping against the obsidian as they struggled to maintain their seats. The air cleared, the oppressive mana replaced by the clean, neutral hum of natural chi. Before they could recover, Baek moved. Heavenly demon step, phantom walk. His body blurred, leaving a faint afterimage that dissolved as he reappeared behind Goreth. His finger found the pressure point at the base of the demon's skull, a precise, surgical strike that sent the chieftain collapsing into unconsciousness. Another step, another afterimage. Vexia spun, summoning a blade of shadow, but Baek was already behind her, his palm striking the junction of her neck and shoulder. She crumpled. One by one, he moved through the council chamber like a ghost. The third clan leader, a hulking brute named Frag, managed to swing a spiked mace, but Baek sidestepped, his hand lashing out to tap a nerve cluster in Frag's forearm. The mace clattered to the floor. Frag followed. The fourth, fifth, and sixth fell in rapid succession, each a single, precise strike to a vital pressure point. The seventh, a wiry demon with too many eyes, tried to flee, but Baek's hand caught his ankle, and a flick of chi sent him crashing into a wall, unconscious. Silence. The council chamber was littered with the bodies of the demon lord's most powerful vessels. Baek stood in the center, his breathing even, his robes undisturbed. A notification pulsed in his mind, cultivation level 5. He ignored it. Lilith stood frozen at the door, her hand still touching the rune. Her face was pale, her composure shattered. Baek walked back to his chair, righted it, and sat down. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek, black pen, a parting gift from the stationery supply closet. He placed it on the table, next to a folded document, a non-disclosure agreement, printed on official Demon Lord's castle letterhead. He looked at Lilith, his eyes calm, his voice carrying the weary patience of a man who had dealt with one too many unreasonable demands. Let's talk about my non-disclosure agreement. The parchment was crisp, the ink fresh. Lilith, the Demon Lord's secretary, slid it across the polished obsidian table with a practiced, neutral expression. Baek Kang-ho picked it up, his eyes scanning the fine print. 15 years of service, hundreds of filed reports, countless mediation meetings, and a near-death experience from a stray death curse. This was it. The reward. The severance package consisted of 2 items, a small pouch of gold coins barely enough for a year's modest living and a deed to a cottage in the Abyss Borderlands. Baek's eye twitched. The Abyss Borderlands was a euphemism for lawless, monster-infested wasteland where demons go to die. He'd read the reports. The place had a 73% annual mortality rate for new settlers. He folded the deed and slipped it into his inner robe pocket. The gold pouch jingled softly as he tucked it into his belt. Better than nothing, he thought, though the bitterness was hard to swallow. At least I'm out. He walked out of the Demon Lord's castle without a backward glance. The guards at the gate parted for him, their eyes averted. Word had spread. The HR manager who broke the Council of 7 with a single technique. The man who stood before the Demon Lord and demanded his resignation signed. They didn't know whether to salute or run. Baek chose the latter for them. He stepped into the shadow of the castle wall and activated Chi Flight. A surge of mild, golden energy enveloped his body, lifting him off the ground. It wasn't flashy, no wings, no glowing aura, just a steady, efficient levitation that propelled him forward at a brisk jogging pace. He'd learned it from a forgotten scroll in the castle's basement archives. It consumed minimal chi and was perfect for long-distance travel. The terrain below shifted from the black, volcanic rock of the demon realm's core to a desolate, gray wasteland. The sky was a perpetual twilight, lit by a pale, sickly sun. Baek flew for 2 hours, his mind drifting to mundane thoughts. What kind of vegetables would grow in cursed soil? How to reinforce a roof against demonic beast claws, and whether the local water source was potable. A plume of smoke broke his reverie. Thick, black, and rising from a cluster of crude stone huts. A village. And it was under attack. Baek descended, landing silently on a ridge overlooking the scene. A band of rogue demons, a dozen or so, with mismatched armor and crude weapons, were ransacking the village. They were low-tier, horned brutes, a few fang-toothed goblins, and a wiry, scarred demon barking orders. The villagers, a mix of elderly humans and half-demons, cowered behind a flimsy wooden palisade. One old man held a pitchfork, his hands trembling. Baek sighed. I'm retired. This isn't my problem. A child screamed as a brute grabbed her by the ankle, lifting her upside down. The star demon laughed, pointing at the old man with the pitchfork. Last chance, old fool. Hand over the tribute, or we burn the whole hovel down with you inside. Baek's jaw tightened. Damn it. He didn't announce himself. He simply walked down the ridge, his footsteps silent on the gravel. The star demon noticed him first, his eyes narrowing. Who the hell are you? Baek picked up a fallen branch, a sturdy piece of deadwood, about 3 feet long. He weighed it in his hand. It would do. I'm the new neighbor, Baek said flatly. And I'd appreciate it if you didn't make a mess before I've even unpacked. The star demon laughed. A dead man with a stick. Cute. Boys, kill him. The brutes charged. Baek exhaled, centering his chi. The nameless heavenly demon scripture hummed in his dantian, converting the ambient hostility into a steady stream of cultivation progress. He raised the stick. Heavenly demon sword, first form. It was a simple technique, a horizontal sweep infused with cutting chi. But the stick, charged with his energy, became a blade of pure force. The first brute's chest split open with a wet tearing sound. The second fell with a gurgle, his throat severed. The third stumbled back, clutching a deep gash across his arm. 3 down. 9 to go. Baek moved. His shadow step carried him between the demons like a ghost. Each swing of the stick was precise, economical. A strike to the knee here, a jab to the solar plexus there. He didn't waste a single motion. Within 30 seconds, all 12 rogue demons lay groaning or unconscious on the blood-soaked ground. The star demon, now alone, stared at Baek with wide, terrified eyes. Who are you? What are you? Baek lowered the stick. A salary man. Now, I have a question. Is the road to the Abyss Borderlands this way? He pointed east. The star demon nodded frantically. Good. I'd recommend you and your friends find a new line of work. The retirement benefits here are terrible. Baek turned and walked toward the village. The villagers emerged from behind the palisade, their expressions a mixture of awe and fear. The old man with the pitchfork bowed deeply. Thank you, great master. We are in your debt. Please, stay and rest. Baek shook his head. I have a cottage to inspect. But if you have a map of the area, I'd appreciate it. An hour later, Baek left the village with a crude map, a loaf of bread, and 3 extra cultivation levels. The villagers had insisted he take supplies. He'd accepted the bread, declined the offer of a daughter's hand in marriage, and continued his journey. The Abyss Borderlands lived up to its name. The ground became cracked and fissured, with faint wisps of purple miasma seeping from the depths. The air smelled of sulfur and decay. Baek's chi sense tingled constantly, detecting hidden threats, a pack of shadow wolves, a sleeping WRM, a territorial basilisk. He avoided them all with practiced ease. Finally, after another hour of flight, he saw it. His cottage. It was a shack. A ruined, dilapidated shack with a sagging roof, broken windows, and a door hanging by one hinge. Moss grew on the walls. The chimney was collapsed. And on the roof, snoring loudly, lay a demonic beast the size of a small cart. It had scales, a long tail tipped with a barb, and a single, glowing red eye that was currently closed. Baek landed 50 feet away, staring at the scene. The deed in his pocket suddenly felt very light. I asked for a severance package, he muttered to himself, not a fixer-upper with a squatter. The beast stirred. Its eye cracked open, locking onto Baek. A low, rumbling growl emanated from its throat. Baek looked at the beast, then at the shack, then back at the beast. He sighed, long and deep, and reached for the stick he'd been carrying. Of course. Why would retirement be easy? The beast on the roof was a shadow form WRM, its obsidian scales drinking the twilight light. It had been watching Baek Kang-ho with the lazy contempt of a landlord who knows the rent is overdue. When he stepped within 10 paces, it uncoiled with a serpentine grace, its mouth opening to reveal a vortex of pure shadow, a spell meant to dissolve flesh and bone into nothingness. Baek didn't flinch. He'd seen worse in HR mediation sessions. The shadow bolt struck his chest, and for a moment, the world went dark. But the nameless heavenly demon scripture within him stirred, a familiar hunger awakening. The shadow magic unraveled, its raw chi feeding into his dantian like a warm broth. His cultivation level ticked upward, and he felt a surge of stamina replenish his weary bones. "You're going to have to try harder than that," he thought, raising his palm. Heavenly Demon Palm, 5th form. The technique was a gentle push, a wave of chi designed to subdue rather than destroy. It rippled through the air, wrapping around the WRM like an invisible harness. The beast thrashed, its shadow claws raking the air, but Baek's chi held firm. He stepped closer, his voice calm and steady, the same tone he used to de-escalate office disputes. "Look, I get it. This is your territory. But I've got a deed, and I'm really tired. How about we come to an arrangement?" The WRM's red eyes blinked. It had never been spoken to like this, negotiated with, not fought. Baek's chi pressed gently, not with malice but with the weight of a man who had filled out too many forms to be intimidated by a little shadow breath. "I'll feed you, give you a warm spot by the fire. All I ask is you don't eat the mailman." After a long, tense moment, the WRM's muscles relaxed. It slithered down from the roof, its massive head bowing slightly. Baek reached out and patted its snout. "Good. I'll call you pension. Because you're what I've been working for." With the beast tamed, Baek turned to the shack. It was a ruined hole in the roof, walls sagging, a door that hung by one hinge. But he had chi, and he had time. He spent the next few hours channeling his internal energy into the wood and stone, reinforcing beams, sealing cracks, and shaping the structure with precise palm strikes. The morning air in the abyss borderlands carried the scent of ozone and distant smoke. Baek Kang-ho sat on the repaired porch of his cottage, a cup of herbal tea cooling in his hands, while Pension the shadow form WRM coiled lazily around the chimney, its scales absorbing the weak dawnlight. He had just finished drafting a formal complaint about the Demon Lord's messenger interrupting his retirement when the ground began to tremble. It started as a low rumble, like a boulder rolling downhill. Then came the sound, thousands of boots marching in unison, the clatter of armor, the creak of siege engines. Baek set down his tea and stood, his chi sense extending outward like an invisible net. He felt them, a tide of human soldiers, priests, and mages, all radiating the sickly sweet energy of divine blessing. At their head, a familiar spike of vengeful light, the hero. "They're not supposed to be here for another week," Baek muttered, rubbing his temples. He had calculated the hero's army would take at least 10 days to cross the Dragon's Teeth Mountains. Either the hero had found a shortcut, or the Demon Lord's intelligence network was even worse than HR. Pension hissed, its tail lashing against the roof tiles. Baek raised a hand. "Stay. I'll handle this." He walked to the edge of his property, a neat line of stones. He had laid himself and waited. The army crested the ridge a mile away, a sea of steel and banners. The hero rode at the front on a white stallion, his armor gleaming with enchantments. Behind him marched knights, archers, and a dozen robed figures clutching staves crackling with mana. The hero raised a gauntlet hand. The army halted. His voice carried across the distance, amplified by magic. "Baek Kang-ho, Demon Lord's dog. Your reign of terror ends today. I, Hero Eldrick, have gathered the might of 5 kingdoms to purge your filth from this world." Baek sighed. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his inner robe, his resignation form, now slightly crumpled. He had hoped to have it signed by now. "I'm not the demon lord's anything," he called back. "I'm just trying to retire. If you leave now, I won't hold a grudge." Eldrick laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "Retire? You slaughtered my party. You humiliated me before the guild. You will pay for your crimes." He thrust his sword forward. "Archers! Mages! Fire!" 1,000 arrows darkened the sky. Fireballs, lightning bolts, and shards of ice followed, a kaleidoscope of death aimed directly at Baek's cottage. Baek closed his eyes. He drew a deep breath, feeling the nameless heavenly demon scripture stir within him. He had never used this technique before. It was a passive skill, one he had unlocked after reaching level 30. He called it heavenly demon chi, pressure field. He exhaled. A dome of translucent black chi erupted from his body, expanding outward in a perfect hemisphere. It was not a barrier of force, but of pressure, an area where the very air grew heavy, where momentum died. The arrow struck the dome and stopped, suspended mid-flight. The fireballs flattened against it like water against glass. The lightning dissipated into harmless sparks. Silence. The army stared. The hero's jaw dropped. Baek felt the magic flow into him, converted by the scripture into pure cultivation progress. His meridians sang. His dantian expanded. Level 31. Level 32. Level 33. The levels stacked like paperwork on a Friday afternoon. "This is inconvenient," Baek muttered. He had hoped to resolve this without violence. Now he had to deal with 1,000 frozen arrows and an army that refused to leave. He raised his right hand and made a pushing gesture. The dome expanded outward, shoving the arrows back toward the army with the same velocity they had carried. They clattered harmlessly against the soldiers' shields, but the message was clear. Nothing you throw at me will work. Eldrick's face twisted with rage. He dismounted, drawing a dagger from his belt. "So be it. I didn't want to do this, but you leave me no choice." He turned to his priests. "Prepare the ritual. Summon the heavenly executioner." The priests gasped. "Sir, that ritual requires a blood sacrifice." "I know what it requires," Eldrick snarled. He slashed his palm, letting blood drip onto the ground. "I will pay the price myself." The priests scrambled, forming a circle around the hero. They chanted in an ancient tongue, their voices rising in a discordant harmony. The sky above them began to crack, light spilling through the fissures like molten gold. Baek felt a chill run down his spine. The energy emanating from that crack was unlike any magic or chi he had ever sensed. It was pure, absolute, and utterly hostile to everything mortal. He took a step forward, but the pressure field flickered. The ritual was interfering with his chi. "Pension," he called, "get inside the cottage." "Now!" The WRM obeyed, slithering through the door. Baek planted his feet, assuming the iron repose stance. He had no idea what a heavenly executioner was, but he knew one thing. He was not dying before he got his severance package signed. The crack in the sky widened. A hand of blinding white light reached through, followed by a face of terrifying beauty, an angel with 6 wings of fire, its eyes burning with judgment. And it was looking directly at Baek Kang-ho. The sky split with a sound like tearing silk, and light pure, searing, white poured through the crack like molten steel. Baek Kang-ho squinted against the glare, his chi sense already screaming warnings that felt like needles behind his eyes. The air thickened with a pressure that had nothing to do with physical weight. It was the weight of judgment, of an existence that had no place in this world. From the rift descended a figure wreathed in flames of holy radiance. It had the shape of a man, but its skin was porcelain white, its eyes empty sockets of blazing gold. 6 wings of light spread from its back, each feather a razor-sharp beam that burned the shadows from the ground. In its hands, it held a spear not of metal, but of condensed mana, crackling with the heat of 1,000 suns. Baek felt his mortal purging heavenly demon chi recoil instinctively. The demonic energy within him, usually so eager to consume hostile magic, now writhed like a cornered snake. This was not the chaotic mana of the hero spells or the dark curses of demon assassins. This was pure, ordered light, the antithesis of everything his cultivation represented. So this is a heavenly executioner, he thought, his hand already rising to form a defensive stance. The hero really pulled out all the stops. Must have sold his soul to some celestial bureaucracy. The executioner spoke, its voice a chorus of chimes that vibrated in Baek's bones. Mortal who harbors the abyss, your existence is a stain upon the order of the heavens. Be purged. It thrust the spear forward. The motion was simple, almost lazy, but the light that followed was not. A beam of pure white energy shot toward Baek, faster than sound, faster than thought. It struck him square in the chest before he could even blink. Pain exploded through him. Not the dull ache of a bruise or the sharp sting of a cut, but a deep, burning agony that felt like every cell in his body was being scoured from the inside. His heavenly demon chi surged to meet the intrusion, but the light was relentless, a flood of mana that refused to be converted quietly. It felt like swallowing molten glass. Baek gritted his teeth, his feet digging trenches in the scorched earth as the beam pushed him back. This is different. It's not just hostile, it's holy. It's trying to erase me, not just attack me. But even as the pain mounted, he felt something else. The nameless heavenly demon scripture, the forbidden technique that had been sealed within him for so long, was awakening further. The light was forcing it to evolve, to adapt. His cultivation base, which had grown steadily from absorbing demonic curses and hero spells, now buckled under the strain and then expanded. Level 46. Level 47. The numbers climbed in his mind like a stock ticker on a good day. But it wasn't enough. The executioner's attack was still pushing him, still burning him. I need more power. I need the second stage. Baek closed his eyes, ignoring the searing light that tried to blind him. He reached deep into his core, past the layers of demonic chi he had cultivated, past the mundane foundation of his years as a salaryman, past the very concept of self. He touched the void at the center of his being, the nameless emptiness that the scripture taught was the source of all true power. Heavenly demon manifestation, second stage. His chi exploded outward. The mortal purging heavenly demon chi, which had always been a dark, swirling mist, now crystallized into a black armor that clung to his body like a second skin. Veins of crimson light traced patterns across its surface, pulsing with each heartbeat. 2 horns of shadow sprouted from his temples, and his eyes turned to pits of absolute darkness, swallowing the light around them. The executioner's spear beam struck the armor and shattered, scattering into harmless motes of light. Impossible, the angelic being intoned, its voice for the first time carrying a note of confusion. No mortal vessel can withstand the purification of the celestial spear. Baek straightened, rolling his shoulders. The pain was gone, replaced by a cold, serene power that hummed through his veins. This form is not demonic in the way the demon lord's magic is. It's something older. Something that predates both heaven and hell. He raised his right hand, index finger extended. The heavenly demon finger, piercing void, had been his go-to for precision strikes, but now, with the second stage amplifying his chi, he felt the potential for something greater. He focused his will, compressing all the absorbed light energy, the executioner's own attack, into a single point at the tip of his finger. You should have stayed in your heaven, Baek said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. I have paperwork to finish. Heavenly demon finger, annihilation. A beam of black light, so dark it seemed to drink the color from the world around it, shot from his fingertip. It was not fast, it was instantaneous. It crossed the distance between him and the executioner before the angel could raise its spear to block. The beam struck the center of its chest, where a core of pure light pulsed like a heart. For a moment, nothing happened. The executioner looked down at the small hole in its porcelain skin, its golden eyes widening. Then the black light spread, branching out like cracks in a frozen lake. The holy radiance around it flickered, dimmed, and died. The 6 wings of light dissolved into ash. The spear clattered to the ground, now just a mundane rod of iron. The heavenly executioner opened its mouth, but no sound came out. Its body crumbled, piece by piece, until nothing remained but a faint shimmer in the air that quickly faded. Baek felt a surge of chi flood his meridians, so powerful it nearly knocked him off his feet. Level 48, 49, 50. The numbers kept climbing, each level a mountain of energy that his body struggled to contain. He reached level 60 before the surge finally stopped, his cultivation base having undergone a qualitative change. He had broken through the bottleneck that had been holding him at the peak of the mortal realm, entering a new stage, the earth realm. His heavenly demon manifestation faded, the black armor dissolving into wisps of shadow. He staggered, catching his breath. That took more out of me than I expected. But I did it. I actually banished a heavenly executioner. He looked up. The crack in the sky was sealing itself, the holy light retreating back to whatever realm it had come from. The battlefield was silent, the remnants of the hero's army staring in disbelief. And there, 100 meters away, knelt Hero Eldrick. The hero's armor was cracked, his sword broken, his face a mask of utter despair. He had summoned a being of legend, a weapon that was supposed to be unstoppable, and Baek had destroyed it with a single finger. The hope that had driven him across the abyss borderlands, that had kept him fighting through a decade of battles, had finally died. Eldrick fell forward, his hands hitting the ground, his forehead pressing into the dirt. I have nothing left, he whispered, his voice cracking. No army. No spell. No god. You've taken everything. Baek walked toward him, his footsteps deliberate, unhurried. His right hand clenched into a fist, the knuckles white. This is it. One punch, and the hero is gone. No more incursions. No more interruptions. Just my resignation and my cottage by the abyss. He stopped in front of the kneeling hero, his shadow falling over him. Eldrick looked up, his eyes red, tears streaming down his grime-streaked face. He didn't even try to defend himself. Baek raised his fist. And then he felt it. A tremor in the air, a shift in the chi of the world. Something was happening. Something big. He paused, his fist still raised, his senses reaching out. Far above, beyond the clouds, beyond the sky itself, a new presence was stirring. It was vast, ancient, and hungry. And it was looking directly at him. The air around the ruined courtyard was thick with the scent of ozone and burnstone. Baek Kang-ho stood over the kneeling hero Eldrick, whose radiant armor was now cracked and dim, his once proud posture crumpled like discarded parchment. The pressure of the heavenly executioner's banishment still lingered, a faint hum in the earth, but Baek's own breathing was steady. He looked down at the man who had sworn to destroy him, and instead of a killing blow, he pulled a folded parchment from his inner robe, a neatly written peace treaty, stamped with the Demon Lord's official seal. Sign this, Baek said, his voice flat, as if he were handing over a routine HR form. And I'll leave you alone. Eldrick's head snapped up, his blue eyes wide with disbelief, then narrowing into venomous hatred. His lips curled. You think I would surrender to a demon? I'm not a demon, Baek replied, tapping the paper. I'm HR. This is a standard non-aggression pact. Clause 3 covers mutual withdrawal of forces. Clause 5 ensures no further hero incursions for a period of 50 years. Very reasonable. Eldrick's hand twitched. Baek's chi sense flared a faint, desperate surge of mana hidden beneath the hero's gauntlet. In a flash, Eldrick lunged, a slender, enchanted dagger gleaming in his right hand, aimed at Baek's throat. Baek didn't move his feet. His left hand shot up, index and middle finger extended, and caught the blade between them. The impact was a sharp xinghao clink xinghao, like a bell struck in a silent room. Eldrick strained, his face reddening, but the dagger did not budge. With a casual twist of his wrist, Baek snapped the blade in two. The pieces clattered to the cobblestones. "Pressure point strike," Baek muttered, and his right hand darted out, tapping a precise spot on Eldrick's forearm. The hero's arm went limp, the muscles suddenly unresponsive. Eldrick gasped, clutching his deadened limb with his other hand, his bravado crumbling into raw fear. Baek retrieved the fallen quill from his pocket. He always carried a spear, and dipped it in the spilled ink of a shattered inkwell nearby. He held it out to Eldrick, sighing. "You can't even hold a sword now. This is your only option." For a long moment, Eldrick stared at the quill as if it were a venomous snake. Then, with a trembling hand, he took it and scrawled his name across the bottom of the treaty. He threw the quill aside, his eyes wet with unshed tears of humiliation. Baek picked up the parchment, blew on the ink, and folded it carefully into his robe. "Good. You'll receive a copy by courier. Have a nice life." He turned to walk away, his footsteps echoing on the broken stones. The weight of the signed document was a small victory, a step closer to his pension, his cottage by the abyss, his quiet retirement. He had done it. The hero was neutralized, the demon lord was cowed, and the path was clear. Then the sky split open. A rift of pure white light tore across the heavens, jagged and vast, as if the firmament itself was being unzipped. The air grew heavy, charged with an ancient, bureaucratic pressure that made Baek's chi churn uncomfortably. A voice, deep and resonant, boomed from beyond the rift, shaking the ground beneath his feet. "The nameless heavenly demon scripture has been activated. The celestial bureaucracy demands your presence." Baek froze. His hand went to the stack of resignation forms in his pocket. He looked up at the rift, then down at the papers, then back up. A long, weary sigh escaped his lips. "I don't have time for this," he muttered. "I have a retirement to file." The rift in the sky yawned wide, a wound of pure light against the bruised purple of the demon realm's evening. Baek Kang-ho stood in the courtyard of the demon lord's castle, the signed resignation form still warm in his inner pocket. He had been walking toward the gate, toward freedom, when the heavens tore open. A column of radiance descended, so bright it cast no shadows. Within it, 3 figures materialized. They were humanoid but not human. Their skin was alabaster, their eyes molten gold, and their robes shimmered like liquid starlight. They carried no weapons, but the air around them hummed with a pressure that made the demon soldiers behind Baek drop to their knees. Baek did not kneel. He adjusted his tie and sighed. The lead figure stepped forward. Its voice resonated not in the ears but directly in the mind, a chorus of chimes and thunder. "Baek Kang-ho, mortal of the lower realm. You have been found in violation of Celestial Decree 7, subsection 3, unauthorized cultivation of forbidden techniques. You are hereby summoned to the heavenly court for judgment." Baek blinked. "I'm retired." The celestial bureaucrat tilted its head, a gesture of confusion that seemed rehearsed. "Retirement is not recognized for those who have broken the heavenly seal. Your cultivation of the nameless heavenly demon scripture has been flagged by the celestial registry. You will comply." "I just got my severance papers signed," Baek said, pulling the form from his pocket and holding it up. "See? Demon Lord's seal. I'm done. No more cultivation. I'm going to tend the garden by the abyss." The second celestial stepped forward, its golden eyes narrowing. "You misunderstand. This is not a request. The heavenly court has jurisdiction over all who practice arts that breach the boundary between realms. Your technique is forbidden. You will stand trial. Baek felt the ambient mana around the celestials press against him like a tide. It was pure, dense, and hostile. And it was flooding into his dantian, converted by the nameless heavenly demon scripture into a warm surge of chi. He felt his cultivation level tick upward. Once, twice, 3 times. He suppressed a smile. Look, I don't want trouble. I just want to go home. But if you're going to use your celestial magic on me, I should warn you it's not going to work the way you think. The lead celestial raised a hand. A spear of light coalesced, aimed at Baek's chest. Last warning. Submit. Baek took a slow breath. He had been an HR manager for 15 years. He knew how to handle difficult meetings. He planted his feet, spread his arms slightly, and let the heavenly demon chi bloom from his core. Domain expansion, heavenly demon chi. The air around him turned black and silver. A sphere of absolute pressure expanded outward, 30 meters in diameter. Within it, the celestial light dimmed. The golden robes of the bureaucrats flickered like candles in a gale. Their mana so pure, so absolute dissolved into neutral chi, feeding Baek's domain. The spear of light in the lead celestial's hand fizzled and died. What? The celestial staggered. Our mana, it's being nullified. Baek stood at the center of his domain, hands in his pockets. I told you. I'm not your enemy. I'm just a salaryman who wants his pension. You have no jurisdiction over me. I didn't seek out this technique. It was awakened by accident. And I've already submitted my resignation. Check the celestial registry if you have one. I'm off the books. The 3 celestials exchanged glances. Their golden eyes flickered with something like frustration. The lead one spoke again, its voice less resonant now, almost human. You cannot simply ignore a celestial summons. I'm not ignoring it, Baek said. I'm declining. Politely. With documentation. He tapped the form in his pocket. I have assigned resignation. I'm no longer affiliated with the demon realm's power structure. I'm a civilian. Retired. You can't draft a retiree into your celestial court. The second celestial's jaw tightened. This is unprecedented. Good, Baek said. Maybe update your bylaws. The domain held for another 10 seconds. The celestials' forms began to waver, their mana draining into the black and silver sphere. Baek felt his cultivation climb again level 4, 5, 6 until it settled at a solid 10 levels gained from their ambient energy alone. Finally, the lead celestial raised a hand. Enough! The rift behind them pulsed. They began to rise, their bodies dissolving into light. But before the lead celestial vanished, it pointed a single finger at Baek. You have bought yourself a month, mortal. The heavenly court does not forget. A formal summons will be delivered. If you do not appear, the consequences will be severe. Then they were gone. The rift sealed itself with a sound like a thunderclap, leaving the courtyard silent and dark. Baek exhaled and let his domain collapse. He felt stronger, more solid, but also more tired. He looked down at the resignation form in his hand. Still signed. Still valid. He turned to walk away. A golden scroll fell from the sky and landed at his feet with a soft thud. It was tied with a red silk ribbon, and the seal on it glowed with the same celestial light. He didn't need to open it to know what it said. 1 month, he muttered, picking it up. I just wanted to retire. He tucked the scroll into his pocket beside the resignation form and walked toward the gate. Behind him, the demon soldiers slowly rose to their feet, staring at the man who had just told the heavenly court to get lost. The great hall of the demon lord's castle had never felt so cramped. Baek Kang-ho sat at the head of a long obsidian table, surrounded by the snarling visages of a dozen demon clan leaders. Their auras clashed in the air like invisible thunderheads, each one radiating enough killing intent to flatten a village. Baek, however, was busy reading his own resignation letter for the 5th time, savoring the demon lord's shaky signature at the bottom. 15 years, he thought, 15 years of overtime, no bonuses, and a pension that barely covers a shack by the abyss. And now this. He glanced up at the assembled demons. Lord Karsis of the Crimson Fawn clan, Lady Vexia of the Shadowmere Coven, General Frax of the Iron Hoof Legion, all of them staring at him with a mixture of fear and resentment. So, Karsis growled, his fangs glistening, "You've summoned us here, human. To what end? To gloat over your accidental conquest." Baek sighed and folded the letter. "I didn't summon you. The demon lord did. I'm just the guy who's still here." He gestured to the empty throne behind him. "He's on vacation. Indefinitely." Lady Vexia's eyes glowed with purple energy. "You think we don't know what you did? You defeated the demon lord, humiliated the hero, and now celestial bureaucrats are crawling out of the sky. You've brought ruin upon us all." "Actually," Baek said, pulling out a neatly typed agenda, "I've brought a solution. The Heavenly Court has given me 1 month to appear before them. If I don't, they'll likely send a cleansing wave through this realm. That means all of you, your clans, your hordes gone." The table erupted. Demons shouted over each other, accusations flying. Frax slammed his fist on the table, cracking it. "And why should we trust you? You're a human who stumbled into power." Baek stood slowly. The room fell silent. He raised his right hand, index finger extended, and pressed it gently against the center of the obsidian table. A faint pulse of mortal purging, heavenly demon chi rippled outward. The table didn't crack, it dissolved into a fine black dust that fell to the floor in a perfect circle. "I'm not asking you to trust me," Baek said, his voice flat. "I'm telling you to cooperate. We build a unified defense. We pool resources, share intelligence, and present a single front to the Heavenly Court. If they see a fractured demon realm, they'll crush us. If they see a united one, they might negotiate." Karsis's tail twitched. "And if we refuse?" Baek met his eyes. "Then I'll take my resignation, walk out that door, and let the Celestials do what they will. I'm retired. I don't have to be here." A long silence. Lady Vexia was the first to nod. "Fine. I'll commit 3 shadow regiments to the border watch." "Good." Baek pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and a quill. "Now, for the second item on the agenda, my formal request to the Heavenly Court." He drafted the letter with the precision of a seasoned HR manager. "To the esteemed Heavenly Court, I, Baek Kang-ho, currently acting administrator of the Demon Realm, respectfully request a 60-day extension to my summons due to personal reasons. Attached, please find documentation of ongoing restructuring efforts within the Demon Realm, which require my immediate supervision. Signed, Baek Kang-ho, retired HR manager." As he sealed the letter with wax, a tremor ran through the castle. The air grew heavy, charged with an energy that made even the demon lords flinch. Baek felt his chi sense flare. Something massive was descending from above. The ceiling of the great hall shattered. A rift, twice the size of the previous one, tore open the sky. Through it marched a legion of heavenly soldiers, their armor gleaming with celestial light. At their head stood a figure Baek recognized, the lead celestial bureaucrat, now flanked by 2 generals in golden armor. "Baek Kang-ho," the bureaucrat intoned, "by order of the Heavenly Emperor, you are to be taken into custody immediately. Your request for extension is denied." Baek looked at the letter in his hand, then at the army pouring through the rift. He sighed deeply, cracked his knuckles, and tucked the resignation letter into his inner pocket. "Guess I'm not retiring today." He stepped forward, his shadow stretching long across the broken floor. The demon lords scrambled back. The heavenly soldiers raised their spears. Baek assumed the iron repose stance, his chi coiling like a sleeping dragon. Fine, he said. Let's see how many levels this gets me.